Hi, and welcome back to the second part of the Astra Militarum tactics. What we're going to look at today is some Vostroyan, Armageddon, Tallarn tactics. So we're going to start with Vostroyans. They're an interesting bunch because half of their bonuses seem to be aimed at close combat and the other half seem to be aimed at ranged weapons. So the regimental doctrine, being able to add 6 inches to rapid fire and heavy weapons, is an interesting one. I mean, heavy weapons, they've got such a long range anyway that's probably completely irrelevant. But to rapid fire weapons, obviously that's good because not only are you adding 6 inches, but you're adding 3 inches to your rapid fire range. So you're rapid firing plasma guns at 15 inches. That's pretty effective. So that's a great start off, and that's free. That's all your units all the time. So really useful for the rapid fire weapons. Then we have an order which allows you to fire your weapons in close combat, so you can fire within an inch of the unit. So that's a stratagem for 1 command point. Again, pretty useful, but again, it's kind of situational. You don't want to be charged. You want to keep the enemy at arm's length because you've got such huge range and such huge fighting abilities. And then on top of that, you've got a stratagem which allows you to add 1 to your hit roll. So this will be really good, either a command unit or a veteran squad. You can see them plasma guns. They're rapid firing at 15 inches, and you're hitting on 2s. Really effective. Obviously, if you're supercharging, that is a bit of a problem because you're still killing yourself on 1s. But yeah, plasma guns still pretty good at strength 7. So yeah, an interesting bunch of Vostroyans. I'm probably not a big fan. I'm one of the few people in the universe who's not a big fan of the models, and obviously they're hugely expensive, and there aren't any good alternatives to converting those guys as far as I can see. I mean, I guess you could take normal guardsmen and put funky weapons on them to represent their heirloom weapons, but yeah, I'm not a fan of the Vostroyans. They're one of the few regiments that I can't see myself doing. So moving on to Armageddon. So the Armageddon guys, they're a funny old bunch. They're kind of transport obsessed, particularly around hopping in and out of transports. So if you get out of a transport, you get to re-roll 1s using a command point. So that's pretty useful. Re-roll 1s is always great, obviously with any unit. It's a pretty expensive way of getting re-roll 1s that basically you've got to pay for the transport. So really, if you've got a good use for lots of transports in your army or big transports in your army, then yeah, I could certainly see the Armageddon guys, because they also have a doctrine which allows them to get back in a tank at the end of a shoot phase. So an order, basically you get back in the tank for free if you're within 3 inches of it. So yeah, pretty useful. I could see that. You stand and you shoot at the enemy as they're coming in with all your guardsmen out of the vehicles. As the enemy get close, you then can leap back into your Chimera. So yeah, I can certainly see that as a potential good use of it, but I think it would take some really good play to make most use of that, and it's just a bit of a quirky gimmick otherwise. Probably the main reason to take Armageddon Regiment is infantry units with their doctrine may double the number of attacks where they make with rapid fire weapons of a range of 18 inches rather than half the weapon's range as normal. So this works in a similar way to the Vostroyans, actually, that they're gaining extra range on their rapid fire. But yeah, pretty good. They also gain AP -1, counts as AP 0 on their vehicles. So I mean, there's a lot of AP -1 around, and going from a 3-up save to a 4-up save is significant. But again, Armageddon, I love the models actually this time, but I don't see them being all that useful. They're pretty nice, but they're not amazing, and they could be quite situational. I could see you going through whole games where, you know, if you're shooting at a shooty army, you're not going to be wanting to jump back into your vehicles, or you know, you're having to pay an awful lot of points to hop out of your chimeras and get the reroll 1s, and then you can't hop back in at the same turn. Even with that order, it's not allowed to go back into a vehicle if you moved out in the movement phase. So it's very situational, but still, it's not bad. It's lots of freebies there for the Armageddon guys. Their relic again is very situational. It's -1 leadership or -2 against orcs, but within close proximity. So you're unlikely to beat enough orcs at close range and giving them that -2 to their morale test. So Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of Armageddon, but let me know in the comments below if you think they're the all new brokenness for 40k and you're going to make them work and crush the world with your brilliance. Comment below. Now we get to the Tallarns. I actually really like these guys. The theme is really that they're a mobile army, that they've got lots of movement. Now your intuition goes, great, you'll be able to get across the table and fight quicker, and then you go, hang on, these guys are guardsmen and tanks. Probably not a great idea. However, what I can see is that you can stand up on the 12-inch line, give yourself lots of early firing opportunities with relatively short-range weaponry, and then move backwards, move away from the vehicles, and be a cloud of troops and vehicles moving away. So the first thing to talk about is the doctrine, swift as the wind, and that really allows you mainly to get out of the way. So what you can do is you can advance and still shoot any weapons except heavy weapons. So you can fire your las guns with I think a -1, it sounds like, and fire assault weapons without the -1. So again, fill up on those melter guns, plasma guns, etc., and you can blast away without the -1 even though you advance. So pretty good for getting out of the way of other things, other troops. So vehicles of this doctrine do not suffer the penalty for moving and firing heavy weapons as well. So again, really useful, especially if you've got lots of heavy weapons on vehicles, which obviously we all like to have. So it's pretty useful. And then the Tallarns have a tank order, which allows them to move 6 inches in the shooting phase, either before or after. So it can shoot with its guns and back out of the way, or it can move up and get in range. So really useful, and that doesn't count towards the Baneblades. Le Mans Russ's 10-inch move, sort of half movement for grinding advance. So you can still move a decent amount with your Le Mans Russ and still blast away. So really useful. I like the Tallarns; they're really good. And because it's focused, unlike the other two we've talked about today, which there's some combat role, some leadership debuffs, and then lots of shooting stuff. This is all about movement. So if you want to play a cloud of models which shift out of the way, and as the enemy approaches, they can move and run and still shoot and get out of the way of the enemy, then this is the army for you. I can see it being really themey, really fun to play. Mobile armies are always fun to play, and yet you still get to shoot really effectively in the shooting phase. So yeah, Tallarns from today are the army of choice. I can see them being really good. They also have a stratagem which allows them to set up 3 units in reserve and move on from the board edge, which mitigates to some extent the old Maelstrom thing that, you know, there's a couple of objectives on the far side of the table which are just hard to get to. So you can set up on their side of the board, you can set up on the side of the board when you come on. So yeah, really useful options in the Tallarn list. So yeah, so I just decided to add in Militarum Tempestus and the Valhallans. Actually, Valhallan's probably my favourite regiment from a looks perspective, having read awesome books on Stalingrad. So these guys are finishing with the theme of the Russian military back in the day. We have Sending the Next Wave is a Valhallan stratagem, and for 2 command points you can re-enter a unit of infantry which has been wiped out previously in the battle. So this could be really good, and you kind of think of a big conscript units coming back on, but I'm thinking bring back on your heavy weapons teams. If you get a heavy weapons team coming back on your board edge, at least they're going to be useful from the get-go, whereas if you bring on a unit of conscripts, even a unit of veterans or whatever, unless they've got significant range, which is unlikely, they're going to be a bit of a spare part. I can see a situation where you're struggling to hold your own objectives, but it's unlikely that the Imperial Guard are struggling to hold their own objectives. They've got such a lot of cheap troops. So I can see this with your heavy weapons team. So bear that one in mind if choosing a Valhallan unit or a Valhallan army. It might be worth picking a few heavy weapons teams just for that. The other was similar to the Vostroyans. Firearm My Command is an order they can use, which allows them to shoot while they're within 1 inch of shoot at enemy units which are within 1 inch of friendly units. So you can have a unit in combat. So this is where it differs from Vostroyan, and another unit can shoot into that. So again, you can fire heavy weapons into there. Now, if you roll a 1, you might hit your friendly unit, but you bang a load of conscripts, keep them in the fight with a commissar or something similar to that, and that should really help. Now, on top of that, their regimental doctrine is infantry units halve the number of models that flee. So even if you've got conscripts and you're taking casualties, if it's a big enough unit, you'll stick around. So this could be similar to playing Skaven in old Warhammer Fantasy Battle. You can fire into that unit. Yeah, you kill some conscripts, but yeah, you're killing a lot more Space Marines or something similar to that, which are a lot more points. So I really like that. It's kind of themey for the Valhallans. The other great thing about their doctrine is vehicles on the damage table need to take twice as many wounds before they start losing abilities. So this is obviously useful for any vehicle, but particularly for super heavy vehicles, which once they start losing wounds, they start losing their effectiveness around their ballistic skill, particularly quite early. So you can really keep those models in the fight, and I found it's really disheartening for my opponent when they piled a ton of wounds into a super heavy vehicle and they just haven't lost any effectiveness. So yeah, I can see the Valhallans being really good. I think you really need to build the army for a purpose. Lots of conscripts, lots of heavy weapons, and possibly some super heavies to really take advantage of those doctrines and orders. Last but definitely no means least is the elite of the Imperial Guard, those Militarum Tempestus. Now, I love these models. They're awesome, and I can see they're having a really good application in Maelstrom, which I think potentially Guard across the board will struggle with, just because they've got such a lot of deep striking troops for such little points. On top of that, you can deep strike with a unit, and then in the shooting phase, hopefully after you've cleared off an objective, you can move that unit in using your orders. So there's real potential for deep striking a unit and an officer, and then moving that unit onto the objective late in the game. Now, onto their specific things, Militarum Tempestus Order is a great one. So you can reroll failed to wound rolls against vehicles or monsters. So those tough units which are hard to wound, you suddenly got a big boost. So whether it's firing heavy weapons and you get that unlucky, not rolling those 4-ups, or just trying to put in a pile of hotshot last gun fire and just trying to pop 6s occasionally, this could be a really good use of this. Even strength 4, they'd quite like to be wounding on 5s, even against sort of light vehicles. So really good order, could make a really big difference. So yeah, I like that one. It's pretty good. The very situational stratagem, however, only one command point, but if someone sets up a unit within 12 inches, you can shoot at them in their movement phase. Now, this could be a real game winner. Someone deep strikes in to try and hold that objective, and you get to blast them off even before their movement phase. So it's pretty good. It's not amazing. Their doctrine is on a 6+, you get to make another shot if you're firing at half range or less. Now, this sounds very situational, but obviously firing an absolute ton of hotshot last guns, you are going to roll those 6s, so it will come into effect. But I think that's a nice addition rather than a reason you'll select to take Militarum Tempestus. I like their specific relic that it's the Auto Reliquary of Tiberius, that unless they roll a 1, they can issue an extra order. So this could be really useful again. Stacking orders onto elite troops becomes really powerful. So yeah, I can see that being a bonus for these guys. So yeah, thanks for listening. That wraps up all the individual regiments. I might have another look once I've played a few games at other units within the book, or special builds. And if you go to warlockstower.com, where I post this blog post, I might write up some lists, particularly for Katashan and the units I like, try and write some lists to give you examples of 2,000 point lists. So this has been the Warlock's Tower, signing off.